I've seen royal births before, but what happened in 2019? That wasn't a birth, that was a cover-up. If Meghan wants the world to believe her story, then she needs a story that actually makes sense.
She was 37 when she gave birth to her son. Now, that is quite old in terms of having a baby.
Everything Harry and Meghan touch turns into chaos, but this time the scale is entirely different. What just got exposed isn't rumor, isn't media drama. It's a detail buried deep in medical records that the royal family tried to hide for almost 4 years. Piers Morgan's home livestream, meant only as a counterpunch after being taken off air, contained one single sentence that froze the entire United Kingdom. One sentence enough to make Harry lose control, force Meghan to vanish, and push the entire royal media machine into emergency mode. And here's the part that blew everything wide open. There is one detail, just one, from the 2019 files that the palace never wanted the public to see, and yet it was mentioned. Live on air, impossible to take back. Once you know what that detail is, you'll understand why the palace panicked, why Meghan was put under media isolation, and why Harry is frantically pulling every string to put out the fire. Believe me, this story is far darker than anything they've ever admitted. A Monday morning in London that seemed perfectly ordinary. Fog still clung to the windows, black umbrellas jostled on the street, and inside the Good Morning Britain studio, everything was running on the same decade-old routine. Studio lights snapped on. Hosts smiled on cue. Viewers at home sipped hot tea and tuned in for a few royal tidbits to start the day. Everyone assumed today would be just like any other, until Piers Morgan walked in. Not walked, stormed in like a thundercloud in a gray suit, eyes narrowed, cold as if he were staring at someone about to stand trial. The director behind the glass suddenly paled, as if a red security alert had just flashed. The co-host reached out for a handshake. Piers ignored it. He slammed a thick black dog-eared folder onto the desk, edges worn, as if anxious hands had opened and closed it 1,000 times. This folder was not in the script. No one on the team even knew it existed. A few technicians nearby exchanged glances. Something was very wrong. The theme music died. Cameras zoomed in on forced smiles. Piers leaned back in his chair. For the first time that morning, he smiled. Not the friendly guest smile, but the smile of a man about to peel away a pristine facade someone had spent years building. The atmosphere flipped in an instant. This was no longer a cheerful morning show. It had become a live interrogation in front of millions. The host began. "We're so pleased to Piers cut him off, voice low, deep, and sharp as a blade. "I didn't come here for morning chit-chat." 1 second of absolute silence. Even the camera fans were audible. Piers tilted his head. "There are things the royal family has tried to bury. Today I start digging them up." Behind the glass, the director screamed into his headset, "Cut to commercial! Cut to commercial!" But the technicians didn't dare press the button. Everything was happening too fast. Piers opened the black folder, not slowly, like he was issuing an order to the entire nation with a gesture. He turned to the first page. A sheet bearing a genuine royal crest, impossible to fake, appeared under the studio lights. Viewers at home leaned forward. The host swallowed hard. A floor runner dropped his headset with a clatter. Piers read slowly, each word landing like a gavel. Absolute prohibition on photographing the mother's face post-delivery. Reason: exceptionally sensitive. The studio stopped breathing. Mother, delivery, exceptionally sensitive. And a royal crest, a line the press had never been allowed to see, a line the palace had forbidden every reporter to approach. Piers closed the page, set it down, and looked straight into the lens, as if staring directly into Harry and Meghan's eyes wherever they were watching. "We haven't even started," he said, voice calm enough to chill blood. "But to understand this story, we have to start with the first question they have never dared answer." The studio lights flickered once, as if the entire system itself was trembling. And right then, an emergency text flashed on the director's phone. "Stop immediately! Directive from Kensington Palace." but the show was live. Couldn't be stopped, couldn't be rewound, couldn't be saved. Piers leaned back, hand resting on the folder, and gave a half smile. Hello, Britain. The real story begins now. No theme music played. No one spoke. And in that deadly silence, millions felt it. A secret door had just been kicked wide open, and behind it was something no one was ready to face. Right after the first sentence tore through the studio air, Piers turned the next page with the calm of a man who knew exactly how deep the darkness went. His voice was no longer measured. It sharpened, grew colder, like a blade scraping across thin ice. In the medical file, there is a 4-minute gap. He paused. A pause so brief it could have been accidental, yet long enough for everyone in the studio and behind millions of screens to realize this was no typing error. Then he continued, every syllable slicing the air. 4 minutes vanished, not redacted, not hidden, completely wiped. Those 4 minutes were not just a number. In royal medical records, where every breath is documented, a gap like that is impossible. The royal logging system is designed to prevent editing. Every action leaves a trace: time of access, user ID, reason for change, automatic backups. Yet this section was blank, surgically clean, not a single system log left, like someone took a scalpel to it and the cut was too perfect to be random. This was not a technical oversight. This was deliberate, and it instantly recalled the chain of irregularities the press had always stopped short of digging into. No traditional pre-hospital photo call that every royal birth for decades had followed. No official medical statement from the royal doctors, something always released to the public. No accurate information about the hospital, the exact time of birth. Even the onset of labor was vague. And the birth certificate, a crucial legal document, was filed late and later amended without proper explanation. Put together, those facts painted one picture. The 2019 birth story was never as transparent as it was sold. Piers didn't need to judge. He just looked into the lens and asked the question the press had never dared voice. If they still claimed to be members of the royal family, why hide what every previous generation made public? In British royal tradition, transparency around a child's birth is mandatory to prevent any question of legitimacy. So why, when it was their turn, did transparency vanish? Then the next page turned, revealing the most unusual security classification in the entire file. The delivery team list classified at national security level. The people in that room that day cannot be found in any public record. No signatures, no titles, no proof they ever worked at the hospital. Piers didn't need to underline it. The document spoke for itself. Why does a medical team need the same protection as special agents on a covert operation? Why treat a birth like a defense-level event? What were they hiding inside that room? Every piece of evidence pointed to one inescapable conclusion. This was not simply a birth. This was an event that required records to be altered at source, real staff concealed, and the most critical minutes of time erased. The moment those questions hit the airwaves, the broadcast feed flickered, brief but unmistakable. Then the entire program was yanked into a technical difficulty screen. The broadcast was killed in an emergency cut. In the control room, doors slammed open. The director burst onto the set, face no longer professionally calm. "You just broke the entire system. The palace demands it stops now. You've gone too far." Not shouted, spoken like a man who had just received an order he could not refuse. Piers looked at him unflinching. Without raising his voice, he delivered one sentence heavy enough to freeze the room. If they have to pull the plug to stop this information, then they're the ones who went too far. The director tried to stay composed, but his voice shook. "You had no authority to air this." And that was when Piers drew the line he would never step back from. "I don't need authority. The public needs the truth." The room fell dead silent. No one answered. No one dared object. He closed the folder, stood tall on the suddenly silent set. And in that moment, without any commentary needed, everyone understood. Those missing 4 minutes were not just a hole. They were the starting point of a truth big enough to shake an entire power family to its core. Just hours after the abrupt cut, a silent shockwave rippled from Los Angeles to London. Harry exploded. Not the usual irritation with the press. This was raw fury that people close to him described as almost uncontrollable. His phone lit up nonstop. No pattern. He called lawyers first, then the PR team, then the media advisors again. Sometimes he rang the same person twice in minutes, as if the thing he feared most was slipping through his fingers, and he was powerless to hold it. Multiple sources say Harry immediately demanded ways to block all rebroadcasts, even though that was practically impossible for a live show. He wanted lawyers to explore suing Piers, wanted PR to draft rebuttals, wanted crisis strategists in both the US and UK to produce an emergency plan. A chaotic sprint unfolded in hours, all revolving around one terror. If what Piers said kept spreading, they would lose control of the narrative forever. But while Harry fought the media fire from the outside, another blaze smoldered inside the palace: internal division. Leaked emails revealed the royal family had no unified response. Instead, two completely opposing camps existed inside the walls. One camp wanted absolute silence. For them, silence was the only shield. They knew the rule of media. The more you respond, the deeper you're dragged into the vortex of suspicion. Let time pass, and the story would cool. They believed Piers's documents could be dismissed as baseless digging, so long as the palace never fed it with explanations. The other camp saw silence as tantamount to admission. They feared the public would fill the void with the worst possible theories. Worse, they believed the 4 years of silence had fertilized the ground for the 4-minute gap suspicions to explode. They discussed releasing a portion of the truth, a risky move the monarchy has used before to seize back control. The two views collided like tectonic plates, throwing the entire power structure into disarray. And in that climate, one leak made everything worse. Suspicion that Piers's documents did not come from an outside source, but from someone inside the royal family itself. That was the trigger that sent Harry's rage into overdrive. He wasn't just angry at Piers for airing the files. He wasn't just angry at the press for rehashing 2019. What truly unhinged him was the feeling of betrayal from inside his own family. Harry has spoken many times about internal leaks, but previously they were small. Rumors, snippets, private details. This was the first time an actual dossier-level file had been leaked, and not just any file, the file tied to the most sensitive event in his life since leaving the firm, the birth of his son. For Harry, it felt like a knife in the most vulnerable spot. Not reputation, but family. If the documents really came from inside the royal circle, someone had deliberately let them out. Not out of curiosity, but with intent. And that intent remained unclear: to protect the monarchy from the chaos they believed the Sussexes created, or to push Harry and Meghan into an even more precarious position. Harry's rage was not just emotional reaction. It was the signal of a bigger subterranean war, not between the palace and the press, but between the people inside the palace itself. And when a powerful family cannot agree on how to bury its past, it always means a much larger truth is about to surface. While Harry spun between phones, lawyers, and PR, Meghan took the exact opposite path: total disappearance. No Instagram, no sightings, no appearances on any platform, even the ones where she normally controls the message. That sudden silence instantly became fuel for public suspicion. Why would someone as image-obsessed as Meghan choose to vanish completely? Why leave her husband to face the storm alone? Or had a rift already opened between them? Media experts called it a cold, silent strategy, extreme defense used when any statement risks backfiring. But longtime observers knew this was out of character. Meghan is someone who always wants to lead the narrative, never let the press write it for her. Withdrawing from view entirely was so abnormal it felt unbelievable. Then, a chance paparazzi shot in California changed everything. Meghan photographed with a man in a suit and dark glasses. No public identification. Their car drove straight into an unmarked facility with controlled security gates. The man, according to people experienced in protection details, was identified as a U.S. Secret Service agent, not private security, not a personal bodyguard, an actual federal agent. The news detonated. If Meghan was moved with Secret Service, this was not spontaneous, and not for rest or hiding. Moments later, a Washington source delivered an even bigger shock. Meghan had been taken to a media isolation location at the request of a major U.S. political player. No one knows who, only that they have enough power to involve federal agents in a British royal scandal. Why would America intervene? The answer lies in Meghan's pre-exit finances. Before leaving the royal family, she signed billion-dollar media deals with an American entertainment conglomerate. That ecosystem runs on brand image, unreleased projects, products tied to the royal retold story. If the 2019 birth scandal exploded out of control, the entire investment structure could domino in days. Not because anyone cares about Meghan's reputation, but because behind her sits a colossal profit network where every photo, every quote, every detail of the Sussex life has economic value. An uncontrolled media detonation could cause damage big enough that Washington did not want to stay on the sidelines. And that detail makes the picture far scarier. This is no longer a royal scandal, no longer a Piers versus Sussex spat. It now touches American interests, economics, media, possibly even diplomacy. Even more disturbing, Harry had no idea Meghan was being held. Sources say he was still frantically calling her while raging and scrambling, completely unaware she had been relocated to an isolated site. That explains why he looked lost that evening and why their PR team kept issuing contradictory messages. One half fighting the media war, one half cut off from the media entirely. Two opposite directions, yet both pointing to the same conclusion. A stronger hand is steering the story. After the emergency cut, the network quietly suspended Piers' air privileges. An unsigned decision everyone knew came from places that cannot be named. But if there's one thing to know about Piers Morgan, it's this. He does not stop just because he's told to stop. That same night at 2300, a notification popped up. Piers Morgan, emergency live stream. No studio, no professional lights, no camera crew. Just his home office, desk lamplight glinting off the thick folder in front of him. The simplicity made it more tense, like watching something that was never meant to air. Then he turned the laptop. A shadowed figure sat behind him, face hidden in darkness, voice electronically distorted, yet still laced with tension. You worked at the hospital involved in the 2019 birth, correct? Piers began slow and heavy, pulling the final puzzle piece. The witness wasted no words. The baby was brought into the delivery room before the mother was brought in. That moment, the live stream froze for a heartbeat. No studio chatter, no audience murmur, no interruptions. Just that naked sentence hanging in total silence, forcing viewers to replay it in their heads to be sure they heard right. In obstetrics, delivery protocol is among the most rigid. The mother enters first. Doctors take position. Support staff prepare. Only when everything is ready is the baby delivered. A baby entering the room before the mother is not merely unusual. It crosses into territory every medical professional recognizes. Either the child was already present, or the birth did not happen in the natural sequence the public was told. Either way, the testimony directly contradicted the entire official narrative of the past 4 years. Piers let silence linger, not for drama, but to let viewers fill the void with questions they never thought they'd ask. If the baby was not brought in with the mother, when was the actual birth? Where? And why reverse the most basic biological sequence? The witness said no more, but that single sentence blew the royal lock wide open. News of Harry's reaction arrived fast, even while Meghan remained in media isolation. A close source described him as panicking, ordering the team to kill the live stream, delete recordings, find any terms of service breach to get it removed. but the clip had already spread too fast. In 10 minutes, hundreds of copies were mirrored across platforms. Once information escapes like that, no PR team can reel it back. Meghan remained completely silent, not by choice, but because she was not allowed to speak. That made the Sussex response even more lopsided. Harry outside spinning against the tide, Meghan erased as if someone deliberately pulled her from the storm the moment it hit the most dangerous point. The live stream lasted barely over 10 minutes, yet those 10 minutes changed the entire game. It was no longer about 4 erased minutes, no longer a TV segment. Now it involved a direct witness, testimony that contradicted the official record, and an unnatural silence from the people involved. And that one sentence became the eye of the hurricane. The baby was brought into the room before the mother was brought in. From that second, it was no longer suspicion. It became the opening shot of a much larger investigation, one that will force the royal family to prepare for what they fear most, a piece of the truth rising to the surface whether they like it or not. Piers' unexpected live stream, barely over 10 minutes, filmed right in his own living room, with a warm lamp casting a slanted glow on his face, triggered a chain reaction far beyond anyone's control. Within hours, it spread at a speed too fast for even veteran media professionals to keep up. Every minute, thousands more replayed it, slowed down each frame, analyzed every breath of the anonymous witness. It felt as though the world had suddenly turned its full attention toward a story people once only dared whisper about, in obscure corners of the internet. Before the shock from that first testimony even settled, another explosion arrived, this time from someone long thought to have disappeared from the battlefield, a former royal communications secretary. She was the one who had handled the most sensitive documents in the turbulent year of 2019, the one who knew precisely how each story was shaped, edited, and presented. For years, she had remained completely silent. But not this time. She chose to speak, not on British television, not at a small press briefing, but in an exclusive interview with a major American newspaper, a move that instantly stripped the palace of any control over the narrative. Asked about the global firestorm sparked by Piers' live stream, she responded with only one sentence, short, quiet, but sharp as a blade. "The story they made public doesn't match the files I saw." No accusations, no elaboration, no emphasis. Yet the silence after that sentence was more frightening than any direct allegation. It implied the existence of two versions of the same event, one crafted for the public and another preserved in internal records. And the gap between those two versions was what finally caused the palace's wall of silence to crack. As the world debated her words, a new wave of analysis rose, this time from an unexpected direction: the medical community. Obstetricians, anesthesiologists, and neonatal specialists began re-examining every detail Meghan had ever shared about her childbirth experience. Things people once skimmed past now became evidence under a magnifying lens. Their findings were unsettling. Meghan had claimed she received 2 epidurals in one difficult labor, but doctors immediately pointed out that epidurals cannot simply be redone on a whim. Removing and reinserting the needle is only done in cases of clear complications, and if so, the labor would have been significantly prolonged with increased risks, not consistent with the timeline she described. She also claimed she returned to work and filming just days after giving birth, despite describing her labor as traumatic and agonizing. Medical professionals agreed that such a quick recovery was nearly impossible for the type of birth she had described, even with the best support. As these analyses spread, the public began stitching the pieces together. The missing 4 minutes in the file, Protocol Level 3, the classified medical team list, the witness words from the live stream, and now the inconsistencies in Meghan's own account. Those pieces, once scattered, now aligned into a logical chain. Not to draw a conclusion, but to reveal that the official story had never fully matched the facts. The pressure on both sides escalated instantly. The palace held an emergency meeting. They understood that if medical experts continued questioning the records, or worse, if someone from the hospital spoke publicly, they could no longer maintain silence. Some advisors pushed for a calming statement, while others urged total silence, fearing any explanation would fuel more suspicion. Meanwhile, Harry faced chaos of another kind. He was battling Piers, the witness testimony, the panic inside the PR team, and worst of all, Meghan herself was in total media isolation. Without her providing direction, the team lacked a central strategist at a time when doubts surrounding her statements were multiplying by the hour. For the first time, both sides, usually mortal opponents, found themselves in the same position, desperately putting out fires caused by contradictions of their own making. From a simple at-home live stream, the story had spiraled into an international hunt for the truth. A suspended TV host, a former royal staffer hinting at discrepancies, medical experts pointing out impossibilities, and a public piecing together fragments they were never meant to see. And all of it pointed toward one haunting question the world had previously only whispered. Did Meghan truly give birth to those children? While the royal family and the Sussexes were still struggling to contain the crisis triggered by Piers's live stream, another blow suddenly struck, this time not from the media, but from the darkest corner of the internet, the dark web. There was no warning, no manifesto, no group claiming responsibility, no demands attached. Everything unfolded quietly, surgically precise. Within an hour, 3 major dark web forums simultaneously received uploads of massive data files from anonymous accounts. At first, they looked like random links tossed into the void, but by dawn, they had multiplied across more than a dozen mirrors, quietly spreading through encrypted communities, exactly where the biggest leaks in modern history usually take shape. The leak didn't burst open. It dripped, wave after wave, over the course of 72 hours. Whoever was behind it seemed to be releasing the information with deliberate control, like someone slowly turning a pressure valve and watching the world react. The very first batch was enough to ignite a media explosion. Internal emails from royal advisors expressing concern about the timing needed to manage the childbirth narrative. These messages revealed cracks behind the scenes, showing how urgently they sought to craft a version of events that would be most palatable to the public. Next came secret meeting logs, urgent sessions held just hours after the 2019 event, all focused on information protocol and narrative stabilization. The documents showed that discussions about controlling the story had begun almost immediately after the supposed birth. The third wave was even more damaging: private messages between Meghan and her PR team. In them, the scope of narrative control was far greater than anything the public had ever imagined. It wasn't simply media management. It was a full-scale, coordinated effort to shape perception from the ground up. But nothing was as explosive as the audio file, a 7-minute recording from an emergency meeting in late April 2019, mere days before Meghan's expected due date. In the recording, papers rustled, a door slammed, and multiple voices overlapped in tense, urgent exchanges. The tone in the room suggested they were facing a situation no one wanted to become public knowledge. Then Meghan's voice emerged, quieter than the others, shaky, rushed, as though she was trying to conceal something. "We cannot let anyone see the state I was in at that moment." The phrase, only a few words long, cut sharper than any leaked email. The state I was in. Those 5 ambiguous words created a void so wide that the world filled it with fear, speculation, and everything in between. No one knew what state she meant, but everyone sensed its weight. Almost instantly, medical experts, PR analysts, and ordinary people online began dissecting the sentence. Some believed she was referring to a medical condition that contradicted her public appearances. Others suggested the state had nothing to do with health at all, but with something far more sensitive, something that could not be publicly acknowledged. Each interpretation added a new layer of suspicion. The tension grew heavier when another leaked email surfaced, in which Meghan's PR staff wrote, "We need a version that's simple, unified, and easy to accept. We cannot let them trace the timeline backward. The questions multiplied. What timeline couldn't be traced? Which part of the story required absolute protection? Why was a version even needed? The absence of clear answers only made the silence more unsettling. As the public dissected the hacked files, several British newspapers launched independent investigations. They discovered that the timestamps of some leaked emails aligned suspiciously well with the departure dates of former royal advisors. People no longer bound by strict confidentiality agreements. This raised an uncomfortable possibility. The hack might not be a pure external attack, but a coordinated internal leak disguised through digital means. Meanwhile, cybersecurity communities examined the audio's metadata and concluded that its age matched the 2019 timeframe. There were no signs of AI manipulation. If the file had been forged, it would have required an extraordinarily skilled team, far beyond the typical capabilities of dark web groups. This revelation pushed the public toward another question. Was Piers involved? Early analyses from independent experts indicated he wasn't the source of the hack. Yet the irony was glaring. He didn't need to be. All he had to do was stand still and let the storm of leaked data funnel directly into the narrative he had sparked. Each file that appeared online became another piece he used to reinforce the doubt seeded by his live stream. One media analyst commented, "Piers didn't orchestrate the hack, but he knew exactly how to turn every leak into fuel for the fire he lit." And indeed, during those 72 hours, neither the royal family, nor the Sussexes, nor the global press could keep pace with the deluge of information pouring out. No one knew what the next drop would contain. No one knew how many layers were left. No one knew what state Meghan had been referring to. What was certain was this: the 72-hour leak had ended, but the war for the truth had only just begun. 3 days of chaos, 72 hours of leaks, a torrent of questions from the 4 erased minutes to the masked witness. Everything built a media storm of unprecedented scale. And while the world tried to piece together the fragments, Piers Morgan returned, not in a long interview, not in a vague post, but on his weekend show, the first allowed back on air after the suspension. The studio that day felt different. Softer lighting, tenser crew, and Piers looking nothing like a man who had just been silenced. He sat ramrod straight, fingers laced like he was about to address a tribunal, not a talk show. Then he stared down the lens without blinking. "We're just getting started." The room thickened. No one on the crew knew that line was off script. But Piers wasn't finished. He leaned forward slightly, as if cutting through every remaining shield. "They know exactly what I have, and they know I haven't played the most important thing yet." 1 second of silence. 1 second enough for viewers to feel that behind those words was not just threat, but deliberate warning. Then Piers gave an almost expressionless smile. Not satisfaction, not provocation. The smile of someone holding the biggest card on the table. He placed his hand on the folder beside him, this time visibly thicker, nearly double the original stack. Just looking at its bulk told everyone that Piers had not been stopped. He had only grown stronger. When he closed the show by shutting the folder, the international press erupted. Image analysts, political watchers, media veterans, even former palace insiders all reached the same conclusion. Piers has stepped into a war no one before him dared touch. And the most terrifying part, he is not afraid. The final assessment revealed the true stakes. Piers is not just challenging the British royal family, an institution centuries old with tighter information protection than any power family on Earth. He is not just threatening the American conglomerates, whose billions ride on Harry and Meghan's image. He is not just defying national broadcast regulators, who can pull plugs on security grounds. No, Piers has declared war on all 3 at once. The monarchy, for suspected cover-up. The corporations, for threatened profits. The information control system, for bypassing every checkpoint to get truth to the public. This is no longer personal scandal, no longer royal versus Sussex drama. The story has left the realm of celebrity and entertainment. It has become a national, even international information war. When Piers said he hasn't played the most important thing yet, the world understood that everything revealed so far is only the surface. And if the surface already caused this much damage, whatever remains could be the piece that destroys everything. A secret big enough not just to rock the royal family's reputation, but to erase an entire power dynasty if it ever sees daylight. The real battle, the one Piers was warning about, has only just begun. What do you think about this story? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching.